The applause hadn't even faded when my wife stood up. Crystal glasses still sparkled beneath the ballroom lights. Friends smiled. My business partners raised their champagne. They thought they were watching an anniversary celebration. Instead, they were about to witness an execution. Claire lifted her glass and smiled at everyone except me. "I'd like to make one final toast," she said. The room fell silent. Her voice never trembled. "Tonight isn't just our 10th anniversary." She looked directly into my eyes. "It's the night I finally stopped pretending." A nervous laugh echoed somewhere in the room. Nobody understood. Not yet. I've spent years trapped in a marriage that only looked perfect from the outside. Every word landed like broken glass. I deserve someone who actually makes me feel alive. Then she reached into her purse, pulled out divorce papers, and dropped them onto the table in front of me. Gasps filled the ballroom. Phones quietly appeared beneath the tables. People love tragedy when it belongs to someone else. Claire folded her arms. "I want everyone here to know I'm leaving you." I looked at the papers, then at the hundreds of faces waiting for me to collapse. Instead, I smiled. Not because I wasn't hurt, because she had just accelerated a plan I'd been quietly building for weeks. She believed tonight would destroy me. She had no idea someone else was already on the way. 3 weeks earlier, tiny details had started refusing to make sense. Claire suddenly cared about my company's ownership structure. She asked strange questions about trusts, about inheritance, about voting shares, questions she'd never shown interest in before. At first, I answered them. Then I started wondering why she was asking. Her phone became impossible to reach. Face down. Always charging beside her. Never left unattended. Late-night messages lit up the screen before she quickly hid it. When I asked who kept texting after midnight, she smiled. Work. Funny. She hadn't worked in almost 2 years. I stopped asking questions. Curiosity alerts liars. Silence comforts them. And comfortable people always make mistakes. A week later, I noticed something else. Every Thursday afternoon, she disappeared for exactly 3 hours. Always the same excuse. Yoga. Except the studio had permanently closed months earlier. I verified it myself. That was the moment suspicion became investigation. Not because I wanted to catch her, because I refused to accuse an innocent person without evidence. I hired a private investigator. Quietly. Legally. Patiently. The first report arrived 5 days later. Photographs. Hotel entrances. Luxury restaurants. Claire laughing beside a man I'd never seen before. No intimacy. Not yet. Just enough familiarity to make my instincts impossible to ignore. The second report arrived a week later. They weren't just having lunch. They were holding hands. Entering private suites. Leaving hours later. The investigator identified him. Ethan Mercer. Real estate developer. Married. Father of 2. I expected anger. Instead, I felt strangely calm. Affairs don't begin the day two people meet. They begin the day honesty quietly dies. Still, something bothered me. Claire wasn't acting like someone planning to run away with another man. She was acting like someone preparing for something bigger. The investigator called me instead of sending the third report. His voice was unusually serious. "There's something you need to hear in person." When we met, he placed a recorder on the table. "I followed Mercer after he left your wife." He pressed play. A man's voice filled the room. "Ethan. Calm. Confident. Once the divorce is public, he'll be too humiliated to fight the settlement." Another voice answered. "Claire. Cold. Calculated. Half his company will be enough." Ethan laughed. And after that, a pause. We disappeared together. The recording ended. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. My marriage hadn't ended because she fell in love. It had become a business strategy. I wasn't losing my wife. I was being positioned as the final investment. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, then quietly asked the investigator one question. "Can you find Ethan's wife?" He looked at me, smiled for the first time. I already have, and at that exact moment, I knew Claire's public humiliation would not end the way she had imagined. I never contacted Ethan's wife immediately. Revenge built on emotion collapses. Truth built on evidence survives. Her name was Victoria, a corporate attorney, sharp, composed, the kind of woman who listened more than she spoke. When we finally met, I placed a folder on the table between us. She didn't interrupt while turning each page. Hotel photographs, phone records, bank transfers, screenshots. Then I handed her the audio recording. She listened to every second. When it ended, she quietly closed the folder. "I've suspected something for months," she said. "I just didn't have proof." Neither of us cried. Neither of us shouted. Pain had already moved beyond emotion. It had become strategy. Together, we built a timeline. Claire had secretly encouraged me to restructure parts of my company, insisting it would make life easier. In reality, Ethan had been feeding her legal advice designed to maximize what she could claim after a very public divorce. They weren't just planning to leave us. They wanted to destroy us financially before disappearing together. Fortunately for them, they believed I knew nothing. Fortunately for me, they kept talking. Every phone call, every meeting, every document, everything was collected legally. Meanwhile, my attorney quietly transferred my voting shares into a protected family trust established years before my marriage. The company remained mine. The assets Claire believed she would receive no longer existed in the form she expected. On the night of our anniversary, she walked into the ballroom believing she was about to win. She stood before hundreds of guests, humiliated me, handed me divorce papers, and waited for applause. Instead, the ballroom doors opened. Every head turned. Claire smiled at first. Then the smile disappeared. Victoria walked in. Behind her came Ethan, not by choice. He had been served legal papers only minutes earlier and had agreed to attend after realizing there was no escaping the evidence. The room fell completely silent. Claire looked at Ethan, then at Victoria, then back at me. "What is this?" I calmly stood. "This," I replied, "is the part of the story you forgot to write." Victoria stepped forward and placed another folder on the table. Inside were copies of every message, every photograph, every recorded conversation, every financial plan they had made together. Ethan lowered his head. Claire's hands began to shake. You were spying on me." I looked at her calmly. "No. I was protecting myself." She turned desperately toward Ethan. "Say something." He couldn't. There was nothing left to invent. Nothing left to deny. I slid one final document across the table. "The company you plan to take," I paused, "hasn't legally belonged to me personally for weeks." Her face turned pale. "The settlement you planned," I continued, "doesn't exist." She stared at the papers without blinking. Every calculation she had made, every dream she had built, collapsed in complete silence. No shouting, no dramatic speech, just facts. Cold, precise, unavoidable. I signed the divorce papers in front of everyone. Then I placed my pen beside hers. "You wanted tonight to be unforgettable," I said quietly. "It will be. Not because you ended our marriage, but because everyone finally saw why." I walked past her without another word. No anger, no satisfaction, only peace. Months later, the divorce was finalized. Ethan lost both his marriage and his business reputation after the fraud investigation that followed. Claire sent letters, apologies, promises. I never opened a single one. Some people think the greatest revenge is making someone suffer. They're wrong. The greatest revenge is becoming completely unreachable. She expected me to beg, to fight, to break. Instead, I simply removed myself from the story she had written for me. She ended our marriage in front of everyone, but the last person she expected to walk through that ballroom door walked away with the truth, and I walked away with something far more valuable. my future.